Elton John saw a pregnant woman crying on Mother's Day. What he did next changed her life forever. The London sky hung low with gray clouds that threatened rain. But inside Westminster Abbey, the warm glow of stained glass bathed the pews in amber and crimson light. Elton John sat quietly in the fourth row, hands folded, eyes closed. Not for prayer, but for memory. It was Mother's Day. A private memorial for his late mother had just ended. And although the world knew him as a showman, today he was just a son, grieving in his own way. As he left the Abbey through a side entrance, hoping to avoid fans and photographers, he spotted her. She was sitting on the worn stone steps, cradling her belly with one hand and covering her face with the other. Her shoulders trembled as she wept. Not the quiet kind of cry, but the broken, soul-deep sobs that come from someone whose world has been shattered. Elton paused. The guards looked to him for direction, ready to whisk him away to his waiting car. But he lifted a hand and stepped toward her instead. "Are you all right, love?" he asked gently, kneeling beside her. His voice was soft, but carried the weight of someone who had seen many kinds of pain. The woman jerked her head up, startled. Her face was blotchy, eyes puffy. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. She looked exhausted, physically, emotionally. Elton noticed her clothes, not ragged, but clearly worn. Her shoes were soaked through. She'd been walking a long time. I'm sorry," she stammered, wiping her face with her sleeve. "I didn't know anyone would come out this way." Elton offered a faint smile. "I sometimes like the quiet exits." She laughed once, bitterly. "I guess I like the quiet places too, even when they remind me of what I've lost." He didn't push. Instead, he sat beside her on the cold stone, despite his tailored coat. Silence passed between them like an agreement. No rush, no pretense. "I'm Sophie," she finally said. "Today was supposed to be special. But the father, he left last month, said he couldn't do this. And my mom died when I was 10. So, it's just me now." Elton felt a sting in his chest. The kind that comes when someone else's pain mirrors your own too closely. "I'm sorry, Sophie." She nodded, but tears began again. As if sorry wasn't enough to contain everything breaking inside her. "I was going to a shelter in Shoreditch," she whispered. "They said they had a place for single mums. But the train was full, so I walked and ended up here. I didn't mean to cry on church steps like some lost child. I just didn't know where else to go." Elton looked away for a moment, blinking back the storm behind his tinted glasses. It was Mother's Day, a day that felt like it had been carved out for people like her to feel the deepest kind of alone. And that's when he made the decision, quietly, without drama. "You're not going to the shelter," he said. Sophie looked at him, confused. I don't understand. You're coming with me." Her face went pale. "What? I don't even know you." "No, but I know pain. I know what it's like to be abandoned, to feel like no one's coming. But someone is coming, right now. Today." He stood up and extended his hand. Sophie hesitated, but something in his voice, a rawness, a truth, made her reach up and take it. As they walked together toward his waiting car, neither noticed the woman across the street who had paused, phone half raised, watching them curiously. She would later post a blurry photo online, captioned, "Just saw Elton John helping a crying pregnant woman outside Westminster Abbey. Anyone know the story?" It would go viral by morning. But tonight, something more important had just begun. The Rolls-Royce glided silently through the damp London streets, the city lights casting ripples of gold across the windows. Inside, Sophie sat stiffly, unsure where to place her hands. Everything smelled of leather and lavender. It felt like another world, a world where she didn't belong. Elton sat beside her, uncharacteristically quiet. Occasionally he glanced over, noting the tremble in her fingers, the way she kept one hand protectively over her stomach. "Is it okay if we go to my place in Windsor?" he finally asked. "It's quieter, safer, and we'll figure things out from there." Sophie nodded, though her eyes brimmed again. "I don't know why you're doing this. You don't even know me." Elton leaned back and let out a soft sigh. "When I was young, I felt invisible. And when I was older, I made myself louder than the world so I'd never feel that way again. But sometimes, when I see someone hurting like I used to, I can't just walk away." They drove in silence again, but something shifted between them. A thread of trust slowly forming. When they arrived at Elton's estate, Sophie gasped softly. The gates, the trees lit with fairy lights. The manor with ivy crawling along its brick. It didn't look like a house. It looked like safety made real. Inside, a housekeeper offered her tea. A doctor was discreetly called to check on her, and a guest room was prepared. Everything moved like clockwork, but gently, respectfully. Later that night, wrapped in a blanket by the fireplace, Sophie finally spoke again. "I was supposed to be a singer," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Back home in Devon, I had dreams, big ones. Got a scholarship to a music school, even had one audition lined up for West End. But then, things changed." Elton looked over, sensing the moment was fragile. "My stepfather got sick. Mum couldn't care for him alone. I dropped everything to help. Then Mum died too. And after that, I just never went back." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with unspoken regret. "I met Dan 2 years ago. He was charming, said he loved my voice, said he'd support me if I wanted to try again. But when I told him I was pregnant, he panicked, said I'd ruined his plans, then he left." The silence between them now wasn't empty. It was heavy with everything unsaid. "I didn't just lose him," she continued. "I lost my last chance. Who wants a pregnant, broke woman trying to revive a dream she gave up 5 years ago?" Elton's throat tightened. He leaned forward. "You know what I think?" he said. "I think your dream never died. It just got quiet. Dreams do that when the world gets loud. But they don't leave us." Sophie shook her head. "You're kind. But I don't even sing anymore." Elton stood and crossed the room. From a shelf, he retrieved a small acoustic guitar and placed it in her lap. "Then sing now," he said softly. "Just for me." She hesitated, hands trembling. Then, slowly, she strummed a chord. Her voice, though shaky at first, carried warmth and sorrow in every note. She sang a lullaby, one her mother used to sing to her, a melody sweet and aching. Elton didn't speak when she finished. He simply wiped his eyes and whispered, "You have something the world needs to hear." At that exact moment, a knock sounded at the door. The housekeeper entered quietly, holding an envelope. "It's from the shelter," she said. "They called." Sophie's name was on a list, but it had a note next to it. Sophie furrowed her brow. "A note?" The housekeeper handed her the paper. Sophie unfolded it with trembling hands. The note read, "This applicant is not eligible due to history of psychiatric treatment. Possible risk." Sophie's face went white. "No," she whispered. "That's not true. That's... Dan must have put that. He knew someone at the council." Elton took the paper from her hands. His face was suddenly grave. Sophie's voice cracked. "He tried to have me sectioned when I said I'd keep the baby. Told them I was unstable, but the doctors cleared me. I was fine. But he made sure there was a record." Elton's eyes burned, not just with anger, but with a sudden terrifying clarity. This wasn't just a woman down on her luck. This was someone targeted, silenced, almost erased. And he had no intention of letting that happen again. The next morning arrived with an icy stillness. Fog rolled across the Windsor grounds like a silk blanket, and inside the estate, Sophie sat by the window, holding the paper with trembling fingers. She hadn't slept. Not from fear, but from something stranger. Hope. Fragile, unfamiliar hope. Downstairs, Elton was on the phone, not with his assistant, not with a friend, but with a lawyer. "I want everything on this Dan. Full name, records, council connections. If he tried to forge psychiatric claims, I want proof," Elton said sharply. "Yes, Sir Elton, we're on it." He ended the call and turned to see Sophie slowly walking in, still holding the damning note. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice quiet but steady. Elton studied her. "Because I've known the kind of men who use power to silence others. I've also known what it's like to survive them." She sat beside him. "Were you ever scared?" He laughed softly. "Terrified. My father was cold, controlling. Fame gave me distance, but not healing. That came later, when I learned to fight not just for myself, but for people like you." For the first time, Sophie looked directly into his eyes. "I'm scared he'll come back, try to take the baby. Say I'm unfit." Elton nodded slowly. "Then we'll make sure he can't." That afternoon, Sophie was resting upstairs when Elton slipped into his home studio. He hadn't planned to do anything musical today, but something tugged at him. He sat at the piano. At first, it was just chords, but then, her lullaby. The melody she sang the night before, now swelling with orchestral echoes in his mind. He began to sing, adding verses, layering emotion onto her haunting tune. His longtime producer, Giles, walked in, stunned. "Is that new?" Elton didn't stop playing. "She sang it. I'm just giving it wings." That same day, his legal team returned with results. Dan Simmons, Sophie's ex, had used a friend in the council to file a false psychiatric report. It had been just enough to keep her from getting housing or help, but not enough to press criminal charges. Clever, calculated, but not unbreakable. With Elton's influence, the file was already being formally disputed. The note would be removed. A counter-investigation was underway. When Sophie heard, she broke down in his arms. "I thought he erased me," she whispered. "But you saw me." Elton held her tightly. "No one like you gets erased. Not while I'm breathing." The next day, he made a call to an old friend at Abbey Road Studios. "I want to record something raw. No polish. Just a piano, a voice, and the truth." By that evening, Sophie stood in the vocal booth, headphones on, her voice shaking as she stared through the glass. Elton gave her a thumbs up. "Just tell your story," he said into the mic. "One note at a time." She closed her eyes. Then she sang. It was broken and beautiful and real. A song of survival, of motherhood, of almost giving up, and then being seen. When the final note faded, the studio fell silent. No one breathed. Then Giles whispered, "We need to release this." Elton smiled. "We will." But what none of them knew, yet, was that Sophie's voice would carry far beyond the studio. Because across the country, a radio intern who happened to be visiting that day captured a short clip on his phone. He posted it to TikTok with the caption, "Elton John just discovered the next Adele, and she's pregnant." By morning, it had 2.3 million views, and Sophie hadn't even seen her phone yet. When Sophie woke the next morning, there was a strange hum in the air, like the world had shifted slightly overnight. She descended the staircase of Elton's home in borrowed slippers, still rubbing sleep from her eyes, when she saw him in the lounge with his iPad in hand. "You've gone viral," he said, almost casually. "What?" she asked, pausing. He turned the screen to show her a TikTok video. Her voice, her face, blurry through studio glass, yet unmistakably her. The caption hit like lightning. "Elton John just discovered the next Adele, and she's pregnant." Sophie covered her mouth. "Is that real?" Elton nodded, amused. "I've been famous a long time, darling. But this is the internet doing its thing, and the world heard you." In the next few hours, everything changed. Her name trended. Industry execs sent messages. Journalists wanted her story, but Elton held them back with a single statement. "She's not a story. She's an artist. Let her choose when and how she shares her truth." Instead, he arranged something private, sacred, her first real performance. Just 1 week later, in a small West End theater, Sophie stepped onto a candlelit stage. No costumes, no dancers, just a baby bump, a microphone, and a piano, where Elton himself waited to accompany her. The audience was invitation only. Survivors, single mothers, counselors, friends, and a few stunned industry figures who expected nothing more than a sweet voice. But what they witnessed was a storm wrapped in silk. She sang not just the lullaby, but 2 original songs they'd written together, about abandonment, resilience, and the fierce, terrifying love of motherhood. By the time she finished, the audience rose in thunderous applause. Some wept. Some held each other. Elton stood beside her and took her hand. No spotlights, just light. Later that night, back at the estate, Sophie walked out onto the garden patio where Elton sat under the stars, sipping chamomile tea. She sat beside him and whispered, "He called me this morning." Elton stiffened. "Dan?" he asked. Sophie nodded. "He saw the videos, said I owe him credit for pushing me to this moment, that I should mention him in interviews, like I'm his creation." Elton's jaw clenched. "What did you say?" Sophie looked out at the moonlit lawn, then smiled, small but fierce. "I said I'm not his anything, and that the next time he speaks my name, it better be to a lawyer." Elton chuckled, relief flooding his face. "Proud doesn't begin to cover it," he said. A week later, Elton released the live version of their duet, Under Her Name. The song hit charts worldwide, not just for its melody, but its message. She was never broken. In the music video, real footage of Sophie's performance faded into scenes of her holding her newborn baby, a little girl named Lily Rose, months later. No labels, no marketing campaign. just a woman whose voice refused to die. A month after that, Sophie gave her first interview. She didn't cry. She didn't name Dan. She didn't beg the world to listen. She just said, "I thought my story ended the moment he left, but it was the moment I was found that everything began." And when asked what Elton John had meant to her, she smiled with quiet reverence. "He didn't rescue me. He reminded me who I already was." The clip went viral again, and Elton, watching from backstage at another sold-out show, wiped away a single tear before stepping into the lights. If you believe talent deserves a chance, like this video and share it with someone who needs hope today. If you were Elton John for one day, what would you do with the talent you discovered? Let us know in the comments and help us keep spreading stories that inspire.